This is the Hall Institute's forum, and we're looking at the question of stem cell research. I'm delighted to be able to come back and really ask you a question which I'm sure a lot of people are interested in. What would we see? What do we expect to see in the next 10 years with the use of stem cell research that'll directly impact on all of our families? We all have in our families these terrible hereditary diseases that people get. Some are popular and well-known, some are not. Are we going to see anything that's really going to be significant the way we did with polio, where polio was conquered in a relatively short period of time after the serum was developed?
Well, I think if we put things in perspective, from the first emergence of polio to a cure was something like 70 years. So science now is moving forward at a greater pace, so we would expect things to happen faster. But if you talk about all of stem cell research, I would say that heart disease is probably number one, and that doesn't only include human embryonic stem cells and use of them in treatment. We're talking about bone marrow-derived cells, or what they call mesenchymal stem cells, or adult stem cells. With human embryonic stem cells, we still don't know how to stop them from dividing properly. The reprogrammed cells offer another venue, and I would say diseases such as Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis, Alzheimer's, will benefit from this type of research. But we have to be very careful. We don't want to give the patients a cell, treat their disease, but then give them a brain tumor.
Father, you've obviously identified some of the causes or consequences of harm being done, but there'll be also hopefully tremendous good being done. Doesn't all morality come down to a sense of proportionality, that you do more good than you permit evil? And shouldn't we use that really, rather than absolutes, as our ethical standard in looking at the question of stem cell research?
No, it doesn't boil down to proportionality, as you suggest. I could give you a simple example where it becomes crystal clear that proportionality is a completely flawed way of approaching the moral question. If it was possible to save two people's lives, let's say Rick's and my life, by killing you and removing some of your cells right now, that's 2-to-1 advantage. And that argument could never be made. So there are absolute lines that always govern morality. Proportional weighing is not the approach that gives you correct answers. Proportionate weighing will lead you in a direction where you actually violate goods in the name of other perceived goods that you claim are higher, when in fact they are not higher. Because when you're talking about certain goods like life itself, that's an infinite kind of good, and you can never directly take the life of another human being under any circumstances.
Do we expect to see in our lifetime the cloning of human beings?
It's already
Not
been
in the
done.
United States, but
it's already been done.
in other societies.
Well, I would say as a scientist, no matter how much money someone would give me, it would be very useless to clone human beings. I think procreation is probably one of the best recreational activities that we have in life. Plus, mixing of two different gene pools with healthy eggs and healthy sperm is the best way to continue the human race. Cloning animals, cloning plants for bioproduction, well, that's been useful for us, and we may continue that, but not human beings.
Human beings have already been cloned, as you may be aware. This was in the news quite recently. There's a small company in California that succeeded in cloning them, actually did it in the year 2007, didn't publish the results until quite recently. These human beings were, of course, still embryos, and they were destroyed forcibly so that they wouldn't be implanted into a woman to make her pregnant. But human cloning has occurred. It has already transpired. It hardly caused a ripple in the news because of these other major developments that we discussed previously on the first part of the show, dealing with reprogramming. That sort of grabbed the spotlight, if you will. But human cloning has already occurred, and the only question is, are we going to take cloned embryos and allow them to be implanted and to generate babies. And it's only a matter of time if we don't draw some very, very strong lines here regarding the future of biotechnology.
Are we at a point now where I thought Congress had passed a law indicating that the cloning of human beings in the United States was illegal?
It's illegal.
It is illegal to gestate cloned human embryos and allow them to be born. You are mandated by law to kill them, which is a terrible law, a law that mandates that you destroy young humans. I mean, what kind of backwards thinking is that? That's how far we've come down the biotech slope without, applying the appropriate ethical discernment.
Have we reached a point where, frankly, our ethical standards, our ethical thinking, really can't keep up with the technology ahead of us?
Well, I think with the cell reprogramming, it really circumvents the need to do somatic cell nuclear transfer and what you would call therapeutic cloning, because you would destroy the embryo and not allow it to gestate. So that field really is going to be stunted by the ability of taking an individual cells and reprogramming it and essentially creating embryonic stem cells, and there's no need to go through this therapeutic cloning process. So I think in one way, this new discoveries are really helping our moral center. Whether you agree with the moral argument or not, it's going to allow us actually to practice better science.
And the other advantage is it gives you cells that are matched to a patient, because you use the patient's own skin cells as the starting point, so there's no immune rejection.
What advice would you give in 10 seconds, of course, and what advice would you give a presidential candidate when somebody asks them to discuss intelligently and briefly the question of stem cell research in this country, and should we permit it to continue?
Well, I would argue that a good presidential candidate will draw strong lines and say, we want responsible and ethical research always in the United States.
Dr. Cohen?
I agree. I think you have to draw lines and make hard choices and consult the right experts.
Well, we've certainly covered a lot of ground in our two shows dealing with this very, very difficult issue of embryonic and also adult stem cell research. We've looked at the whole question from a variety of perspectives, and hopefully it'll continue a dialogue which we will all benefit from, those of us especially who are concerned where ethics and science and culture and politics meet. And it's called the area of public policy, which is what this forum is all about. Thank you very much for being a part of this for our two sessions, and I hope you'll go back and see it again. Thank you very much. I appreciate your tuning in.